Jeremy is just made managing director over at the University of Utah of the University Venture Fund. I just got that on my LinkedIn today, Jeremy. So,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
It's official. Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. So the only thing I hate worse than talking at people is talking about myself at people. So my comments are going to be fairly brief, but feel free to ask any questions as I go along. If it resonates something with you and you go, hey, wait, how did you do that? How did your family do that? Feel free to shoot your hand up. I'll give a little more bio because I know Kurt wanted me to speak directly to what's going on in Utah, but as well as what's going on is what he calls the third impact, which is how do you get your kids involved in philanthropy. And we both believe that one of the best hooks for getting your kids involved in philanthropy, especially with the millennial generation, is through impact investing. And that's kind of how I came to it, but I came to it with a very roundabout way, which is my father was the CEO of American Stores Company. We sold the company in 1999 was when the transaction was actually effected. It took us 2 years to get through FTC. But in about the first 18 months after my dad sold the company, he figured out that he had no predisposition for managing his own money. He was great at running a company, great at managing people, but he had absolutely no ability to manage his own money because his time frame was so short. He was like, I'm going to outlive my money at this pace. Like, there's no way I can take a long-term horizon enough to be able to invest. So as I was getting out of my MBA, I was going to go into private wealth management anyway, and he said, look, I'm going to hire somebody to manage the foundation. We'd set up a foundation as part of the liquidity event. To manage the foundation and to manage my assets, I'm going to pay that person 1% because that's market rate. Job's yours if you want it because I trust that you're going to do it. Better than anybody else because you have a lot more vested interest in it than somebody sitting on a desk in New York. You're going to earn less than you will if you go to New York and do your job, but it's yours if you want it. So my wife and I talked about it a little bit and said, okay, we'll have quality of life. We were thinking about starting a family. I can actually see my kids as opposed to being on an airplane all the time. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll live in Utah and we'll have a decent quality of life. We'll be able to get back and that's fine. We came back and I tried a number of things to be able to outproduce the people in Wall Street. Figured out that people in New York have information an hour faster than I do. Regardless of how much I sat in front of my computer, I couldn't out day trade the guys that had inside information, call it what you want, but they have an inside source that you're not going to get sitting in front of your computer. Tried a bunch of things, figured out that real estate is something that I really understood and could be able to make a difference on for my family. And that's wonderful, but that left me with huge blocks of time that I wasn't doing a lot with. And my brain isn't very good at just sitting around golfing or skiing or doing a lot of those other things that I should be doing, so I got involved in philanthropy, like really involved on the foundation side. It started off with doing deep dives on due diligence for the philanthropies that we wanted to give to. Got more involved by sitting on the boards of some, have recently started some nonprofits and done a lot of things like that. On the for-profit side, I also got involved in angel investing, to Kurt's point, and kind of got really liking these small companies. And the more those two fields collided, I started to look at it and say, well, impact investing is a really interesting way to use tax advantage capital to help entrepreneurs do something really, really cool. That may be a better way to make this all work going forward. And I will say, again, for this room where you're looking at a lot of different things and how does impact investing affect my family and other things, for me, and I'm extremely fortunate to be able to have this career path, right? And I fully understand that. But for me, it's really been a great path to be ingrained in my family and also in the community that I'm in. And founding the Community Foundation was much more of I was sitting at a conference talking about my family foundation and the holes that I saw in philanthropy in Utah. And it resonated with Fraser Nelson, our first executive director, who said, you need to meet this guy, Greg Warnock, who kind of thinks the same way. And we sat down and started brainstorming and saying, how do we change the way people give their philanthropic dollars in Utah? How do we make a difference in Utah? And one thing led to another, and we listened to folks and we said, okay, great, we need a place where we can pool capital, where we can make philanthropy easier for donors. Let's build that and let's figure out where it goes. And we're now 7 years into it and have 25 million under management. We've given away 30 million, or our donors have given away 30 million over the last 6 years. So that to me is a pretty nice success story. So for me, this has been a great platform to be able to feel like I'm doing something for my state. Kurt mentioned the Utah, sorry, not the Utah, it is the University Venture Fund. We've gone under like 6 different titles for what I'm doing now at the university. And one of the really cool things about doing impact investing in Utah is we are actually an international center for this, and it's not that well known. I left a meeting just to come here up at the university talking about how do we get the news out about what the Sorensen Center up at the U does. I've had 3 different meetings this year with people from Oxford, Wharton, Harvard, Stanford, where they're asking us how we pulled off what we pulled off up the hill here. And most people in this room probably don't know about it. And that's just one resource, along with PIN and the Community Foundation and others. This is a place where I can tell you, living this day in and day out, we're at the forefront of something really cool here, and there's enough energy here that I think Utah is really a place where we're going to be able to pull off. This term is way overused, but we really could become the next Silicon Valley of, we could become the Silicon Valley of investment or impact investment. And I know that's a big audacious goal, and you hear that, every place we go. I've also started an incubator up in Park City, and when you start an incubator, you go study other incubators, and every single incubator in every small town that you study is going to make them the next Silicon Valley. I really fundamentally believe this could be the home of impact investing in the U.S. And to that note, what I'm tasked with up at the U right now is raising an impact investing fund that's going to invest in Intermountain West companies. We don't want to quite narrow it down to Utah. We're going to be Utah focused. I have one investment warehouse right now, Graduation Alliance, which is a company headquartered just down the street here. And they are a for-profit that takes their typical customer, if you will, is a girl who gets pregnant in high school, so she has to take care of her kid and can't attend class every day, but she really, really wants to graduate from high school. And they have a whole curriculum mentoring program where they can get her an actual diploma. They work with the school district to get an actual diploma as opposed to a GED, because it's shown there's like a 20% gap between getting a GED and a high school diploma for a typical graduate. So, those are the types of companies that we can invest in here in Utah, and we have a lot of resources for it. So again, that's, I guess, my 3rd generation / impact investing in Utah is cool. Are there any questions, or I'm happy to turn it over to Catherine and move on.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So it's also a comment to the group. So one of the, I met Jeremy's father, it's Victor, right?
Yeah.
Victor. And I asked him the question, how is it that you raised a son like Jeremy, who is the most skinflint, tightest fisted, rich young man that I've ever met? And he indicated to me that they raised Jeremy in philanthropy, and that was part of what had an effect on him to become that way. So my question, Jeremy, is how did you become such a skinflint?
I think it's, so part of that is.
And what I mean, but that's a positive comment,
yes,
by the way.
Yeah, no, that is, we've had this discussion many times. Part of it is I'm only 2nd generation, and that's, one of the things talking to people when they're talking about setting up whether they want to set up a foundation or a DAF or some other things, is really understanding where your kids are. My father was the son of a florist from Bountiful. And granted, he was a commercial florist, so he had big warehouses full of flowers, but You know, he was a self-made man and very much, you know, he was not the first generation to go to college, but he was the son of a florist. And our first house was, which I actually still have a slight memory of, was about 800 square feet. So I think that's part of it, is my folks lived that way. But I also think it was very much a, you know, from an early age, my folks always, and I do the same with my kids, made a point to point out, look, you know, with different life choices, here's where you're gonna end up. And, you know, with certain things, it only takes one blip. If you're extended, if you're living to the, you know, far ends of what you can live, it takes one minor blip and all of a sudden you're on the street and you're not gonna recover from that. And I think it was very much constant parenting. And look, if you make this choice, you're gonna end up, you know, digging ditches for a living. And I had manual labor jobs when I was younger to understand why you don't want to do that for a living. And then I was able to have good professional jobs once I was in college, and they were not that much fun, but you understood that you'd eat that way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and it was, you know, very much, it was a very deliberate effort on the part of my parents to raise me.
What was one of the most impressionable experiences and exposure to of the charity type program that you were involved in either your youth or in college years that really helped to frame you and your focus today?
I am going to use one that I somewhat loathe to use, but it's definitely one that sticks in my mind. And the reason why I'm loath to use it, I preface this in advance, is too often we use travel as to somewhere as an excuse for how we're going to teach our kids something. I don't think that always has the effect that you want it to. I went to 2 different trips. So one trip to Italy when I was 16. We were in a lot of the areas where we were with my cousin and her husband, and a lot of the areas where he served his mission. And these were really not wealthy, but not poor areas of Italy. And area after area after area, you're looking at places where people are not poor, they have food on the table, but they don't have air conditioning. Most of them, you know, if they have a car, it's pretty old. And you start to realize that even in the civilized world, and you know, I'd read about Asia and about Africa at this point in time, but you realize that even in Europe, you have a level of wealth that is just not up to US standards. You know, and even Utah's not the wealthiest place in the world. You go to rural Utah and it's not that wealthy, but that kind of had an impact on me. But then going to Africa, which I didn't do until I was 24, 25, we went to East Africa. And this was not on any sort of a, you know, we weren't there on a working trip or on anything like that, but just going through East Africa and seeing people carry water. And, you know, you see the mud huts and you see all the rest of that, you really figure out how fortunate you are. And how, you know, whatever problem you have about, you got a ding in your car and so you're gonna have to forego a couple dinners to fix it. Like, that really kind of puts things in perspective for you, right? It's really one of those things. And it wasn't, my parents didn't have to point that out to me. I was raised in such a point that it just has a profound impact on you. And I think that's partly why I'm not able to just go ski in my free time or do something else. I felt like I had something, I was given something and I had to give it back.
Thank you.
And one more question, a follow-up question. One other thing, I met your son and your, I think, also your daughter, one of your 2 sons.
2 sons,
Two
yeah.
sons.
Mm-hmm.
And then your father, I guess, and you are engaging them in philanthropy at a very young age. Can you describe how to get that generation involved and how you're doing it as a family?
Shameless plug. Love Utah, Give Utah is a great way to get your kids involved in philanthropy. We, as part of the Family Foundation, set a giving piece for each age. So, you know, for the 5-year-olds, you get $50. You can give to whatever you want. We don't want to prescribe if they want to give it to the dogs, great, give it to the dogs. Up to 10 years old, you get $100 to give because you're still not, we want all the kids to be involved. Under 5, they really don't know what they're doing, but you just want them to feel involved. And it's an excuse to have cupcakes. It's great. Up to 10, you can give $100. And then we're still trying to figure out the 10 to 15 what that band looks like. We're still at $100 just because we haven't moved it up yet. My oldest, full disclosure, Know Your Children, doesn't quite get it yet. He's grown up a lot in the last year, but he's not quite. I think my 11-year-old is probably more advanced on math than he is as far as financial math. But then once they get to be 15, we are actually going to make them start doing real due diligence on where they want to give and present to the investment committee, the gifts committee at our family retreat. So you have to actually tell us why you're doing it once you hit 15, as opposed to merely saying, I want to write this check. And so you kind of get them used to the fact that they're going to be able to give money away. But then once they're old enough, say, hey, look, here's a way that you can do it, but you have to have some logic behind it. It's not just writing a check. You want to know why you're doing it, where it's going to go. And I'll make up what happens when they get to 20 as we go forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, everybody.